Good evening, everyone. Ranter is back to give you yet another rambling diatribe of the news of the day. So, I was going to give, a minute of grace time and be nice to the beleaguered President Trump while he was battling COVID-19. I was going to give him a minute. But I've been hearing enough in the past few days on all the thoughts and prayers, and I did do my own special statement on it, which I left hang and I was honest about it. But for now, I think I'm just going to reduce the well-wishing from a minute to 30 seconds. And that starts now. Okay, I am pleased that he is recovering from COVID. I, for one, am one of his biggest critics, especially on Middle America. However, I would not want to see him or his family physically harmed or hurt or ill or worse. And I do hope that he has a speedy recovery and he learns something from it, as we all do. Okay, 30 minutes is up. Now, when he comes back from Walter Reed, you kind of want to ask him if he learned something from this. Now, of course, he made this statement of how he's learned so much about COVID, in one of his tweets, but then he says that he has felt better than he's ever had in 20 years. And then he goes to the White House and then gets on the balcony and melodramatically peels off his mask because he's all strong and virile and so forth. Even though people who are recording this are seeing him gasping for air. But, digress to that. So, when the question is asked, had he learned anything? It's kind of like asking Peter Griffin from the Family Guy, did you learn anything, Peter? Nope. No, he learned nothing. So much so that we still are inundated with the bullshit that he and his administration pumps out, even at the expense of his own health. I mean, we hear the diagnosis of him getting COVID, and then we start with the bullshit there because, he does, sometimes he feels fine, and a few hours later, oh, it's just mild symptoms, but it's okay. And then it gets let out a little bit more, okay, a little bit more moderate symptoms. He has a low-grade fever, it's okay. No, it's actually a high fever, we're sending him to Walter Reed. Now, COVID can affect people in different ways, depending upon the condition of the person. And certainly someone who is 74 years old and is 322 pounds. Oh, excuse me. No. That was a little... Someone happened to actually see that on a medical report of his actual weight. No. He's actually 230. So, no. Yeah, he's 230. Someone of gradual overweightness and of his age is at the high risk range, right? I'm feeling like I have to jump around here a few bits, so this is not going to be all that linear. I want to go into how galling and enraging this is when any of us normal mortal human beings, if we get diagnosed with COVID, we get a positive, then we mandatory have to spend 10 to 14 days in isolation getting treated. Super Trump, what? It's a weekend at Walters? It's like the weekend at Bernie's, only there is no dead body, and it's a hospital. So a weekend at Walters. You go through all the harrowing things that are happening to him. He gets a cocktail of various drugs, from experimental to mundane, like aspirin, including inversion steroid. Now he's doing fine. He really shouldn't be having to do all this, right? But you know, the thing is that the amount of bullshit we still get, because we never can get a straight answer out of anybody, including his own fucking doctors, where the doctors come out and is upbeat, and we have to keep it upbeat. No, he wasn't on oxygen. No, he didn't. He wasn't on oxygen on Thursday. Was he ever on? Was he ever on oxygen? He wasn't on Thursday. No. Wasn't on Friday. No. And a day or so later, he comes back out and says, "Oh, all right, he was on oxygen." Are these adults? Are any of these people adults? Then when they ask the doctors, why don't you give us this information or that information? Well, then he goes, well, that would violate HIPAA, patient confidentiality and all that. Well, then you're giving out information of other matters, misleading information. There's one thing to be confidential about your patient's conditions. It's another to lie about the conditions. That's not holding up the confidentiality. That is giving out misleading information. If you want to be confidential, it says, at the president's request, or at any patient's request, their medical records, their condition is under patient-doctor confidentiality. Some people might grouse at that, but that's also legally acceptable. That's fine. People will get over that, or would get over that, but no, we go to the lie first, don't we? We always go to the lie first. The narrative here is that he got COVID, I guess, from Hope Hicks. Hope Hicks had COVID, or had tested positive for COVID, hung around with the Trumps, hung around during the debate prep, hung around for the Trump fundraiser, the $250,000 fundraiser they were doing in New Jersey. And there was the Supreme Court, the official nominee ceremony with Judge Amy and all the people that happened to be there, who were like, high-fiving and hugging and no masks and any of that bullshit. So Hope Hicks got it. Or they're claiming that she gave it to everybody. Chris Christie, who was at the debate prep, who ingeniously told Trump, keep interrupting because Joe Biden stutters, and just go after, his speech impediment, because why not be a fucking asshole? Senator Tom Tillis gets it. Mike Lee gets it from the Rose Garden ceremony of Judge Amy. The new chief of staff that took over for the old chief of staff, Brad, who was threatening to hurt himself, so they tackled him in his underwear or shorts or whatever, who was, I guess, embezzling $40 million from the Trump campaign. All the best people. And McInerney, the press secretary, now revealed that she has COVID. Is there anybody left that does not have COVID? And one of the things that made me doubt, not doubt that he has it, doubt the diagnosis and when. Because for months and months, White House personnel, from household staff to the presidential staff, to Secret Service agents, to campaign personnel, up to a cabinet member, developed COVID. Developed it. And all the while this time frame, he's still downplaying, misconstruing, uh, pumping out misinformation, casting doubt on the findings of his own scientific staff, his own task force, pushing back on anyone who's using, pushing for masks and PPE. Get our federal government into a draconian system in order to make states who were needing it the most to bid each other for the stockpile PPE that the federal government has, which Jared Kushner incidentally says, well, they shouldn't get any of that. That's not their stockpile. That's our stockpile, the federal government stockpile. Well, where's that federal government stockpile supposed to go? Is there a state that is only federal that exists in another reality? So none of this extra stockpile of shit that you have that none of these states that need them matter. But then again, with Jared Kushner and the same thing as Trump, when blue states were getting it and we're getting sick of it, then that didn't really much matter, was it? Because they're not really supporting of us. So fuck them over. Never mind the fact that we're all Americans. Son-in-law genius and stable genius with all the right fucking words seem to neglect the fact that within blue states, there are Trump supporters. Those Trump supporters would also get hurt if you decided to neglect these states because you are morons. But let's digress from that. Months and months we've heard these cases of COVID come down the pike. We hear more that Mike Pence would isolate himself, more than we hear Trump isolating himself. Trump does these rallies and he still wants the image of, strength, and so no mask or a very limited mask. You can have masks, but we don't want you to have masks. And so we'll encourage you not to do masks, even though you really should. I've been a broken record about this from the Tulsa rally. There were 10 confirmed cases of the coronavirus that went to Tulsa. 8 Trump staffers, 2 Secret Service agents. And while he says later on during that none of his rallies, all his rallies were okay, there wasn't a problem at any of his rallies. Again, broken record. Herman Cain. 2 days later, positive for corona. A few days later, hospitalized. A month later, dead. Don't acknowledge that, right? At this farcical presidential rally where the Trump clan decided to show up, take off their masks, and just sit there smugly while everyone else in the place was wearing masks. Chris Wallace, who's taken his fair share of abuse of being railroaded and trampled by the Trump onslaught of interruptions and bullshit. Asked one of his major campaign officials about that, and the guy was giving him some bullshit, and Chris Wallace wasn't having it, and got into his face about it pretty much on this show. And then Chris gets accused of his narrative, the media narrative. No, he says he's supposed to be wearing it regardless of you passing the test or not. Now, we don't even know if Trump had passed the coronavirus test before the debate. They claim it, But they're on the honor system, weren't they? And it turns out that Trump knew he was positive, but he wanted to withhold the information until he got a second test, which was that Thursday. So we went to public events like that fundraiser. Same thing as Hope Hicks did. With the prospects better than average that he contracted COVID-19 and passed it around. New Jersey wants to do some contact tracing to see how many people in there. And at first they were refusing to assist. The Trump campaign or administration was refusing to assist in this. They didn't want their major donors and guests to be named. Same thing as the Rose Garden ceremony, where so many people did contract it. Bill Barr didn't want to do any isolating. He didn't want to isolate, even though he was exposed to it, the same as everyone else. I guess he has to be a good lackey for the Trump movement, that he was going to be defiant. Now, he has said in previous statements, Bill Barr did, that he likened shelter-in-place rules and mandatory masks to slavery. What the fuck is wrong with these people? First of all, it's amazing to me how the Attorney General's office has become so freaking political. I mean, this is justice by way of whatever Master Trump wants. Now, it's true that the AG office has had its share of being political in its past, in various other precedents. But not to this degree. Maybe you could say that this is on par with or beyond the level of the Attorney General under Nixon. You know, the machinations to go after Nixon's enemies, which included, you know, hippies, you know, having people infiltrate their groups in order to screw them over and make them do illegal things, incite them to do illegal things so they can be prosecuted. But Bill Barr, man, I mean, again, you have to remind people that Bill Barr has a history. He's done this job before under Bush Sr. And he gave a little slap on the wrist for those who were caught up in Iran-Contra. So he had a history. I don't know why people were like, oh, he's going to be a straight shooter. So Trump goes to Walter Reed, loaded with our prayers and well-wishing. And still, it's bullshit. Still bullshit. Nice little production show of getting him onto the helicopter to go fly its way to Walter Reed in a matter of minutes, which he also could have done in a motorcade, but whatever. And we have to still prove that he's still strong, and that he's still virile, that he's still doing the job. So they post 2 pictures of him working and some music. First of all, everyone has already gone to the point of him like scribbling on blank pieces of paper. You know, him working. That's what that is. There's 2 pictures of that, and they're from 2 different locations, and he's in 2 different clothes. Like he's in a suit in one, and then he's just in his shirts, just in a shirt in the other, right? Just to pump up the illusion that he's been working all day. Turns out those two photographic incidents within the space of 10 minutes. So his working hard was him waddling from one location, doing that photo op with blank pieces of paper, to waddling to the other location, taking off his coat and doing the same thing within 10 minutes. No wonder he needed oxygen. And then he does that little stunt on Sunday where he was just going to take a joyride around Walter Reed to bask in the love and adulation of his Trump supporters. To which the Secret Service agents that were compelled to go with him now have to go into isolation for 14 days. And the driver, risking people's lives, risking the lives of the photographer of those two photographic incidents, we should add. And then in the morning, I guess before the doctors were making their rounds, he was tweeting up a storm in all caps, incoherent phrases that, it's like about the randomness of stuff, but nothing that's contained within an actual sentence. Just phrase here, phrase here, phrase here, phrase here, all in caps, vote, protect pre-existing conditions, Second Amendment, purple puppies, Stormy looks like Ivanka, I don't know, whatever. And then he comes back to the White House. Well, now, by the time I went to work today, he was back at the White House. Altered his way in, got onto the balcony, pulled off his mask. He gasped, but, still strong. Putting out that there's nothing to fear with COVID. Don't be afraid of COVID. He had COVID. He learned so much. Now he feels better than he's ever had in the last 20 years. Now, I take certain issue with that. Because there's some people that are not as lucky who go through COVID. And here's one. A North Carolina elementary school teacher dies days after testing positive for COVID-19. A third grade teacher died in North Carolina days after testing positive for COVID-19 while her students were quarantined as a result of the exposure. Julie Davis, who taught at Norwood Elementary School in Stanley County, died from COVID-19 related complications, according to Michael Bailey, Michelle Bailey, a spokeswoman for Stanley County School District. While the official cause of death hasn't been released, Bailey confirms Davis's diagnosis. We extend our deepest condolences to Mrs. Davis' family, the district said. We were truly blessed by her professionalism and caring spirit. A family member told CNN affiliate WSOC that Davis was one of the hardest workers and she was compassionate, caring, thoughtful, and someone who loved to the depths of her soul. Davis began experiencing symptoms on September 25th and immediately self-quarantined, Bailey said. On September 29th, the Stanley County Health Department notified parents of the teacher's third grade class that they were required to quarantine for 14 days after being exposed to a staff member who has tested positive for the coronavirus. Bailey told CNN the staff member was indeed Davis. CNN reached out to the North Carolina Office of Medical Examiners for confirmation of cause of death, but hasn't heard back. None of the quarantined students have developed any symptoms or tested positive, Bailey said. The health department told the administration it believed Davis did not contract the virus from the school. Davis taught at Norwood Elementary for 2 years, and She had earned a reputation as an inspirational teacher who was always seeking ways to support every student so they were be able to fulfill their potential, the district said in a Facebook post. The students absolutely loved being taught by Mrs. Davis, the district said. Her personality was infectious and she brought joy into the lives of the students, staff, and community. For the third time in less than a week, North Carolina is reporting more than 2,200 new COVID-19 cases. According to the data released by North Carolina Department of Health, on Monday, the state reported 2,258 additional infections related to the coronavirus, the Department of Health reported. So, she diagnosed the 25th, was dead 24th, or 29th, excuse me. Trump treats COVID, his experience with COVID, like it was no big whoop. People get tested positive, and mandatory go into isolation for 10 to 14 days. He goes for a weekend. Trump supporting sycophants, talking heads, people like Greg from Fox, who used to be on MTV, pretty much proclaimed Trump as a martyr for taking on COVID for America. Fuck you. Jesus fucking Christ. Selfless act. Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends kind of let the cat out of the bag, or there might be a little bit of a machination going on about this, upon how quickly Trump is going to beat COVID. That will be a message in of itself. 3 days, right? Magic. 3 days. How many other 74-year-olds who are overweight could survive for just a few days like Trump did? Though we don't know because, the reports of how his condition was, goes back and forth, right? It's funny how the same day that the doctors first gave that rosy, upbeat diagnosis for the press to take with him what Trump is going through, Mark Meadows, who is the chief of staff now, who when he came out and did his thing for the press conference on letting them know that Trump was tested positive for COVID, he wasn't wearing a mask. And when asked why wasn't he wearing a mask, is because he decided that masks were not 100% effective. You know what's 100% effective? Not wearing a mask. What's the argument of people who don't want to wear a condom, saying that, oh, condoms are not 100% effective, so I just go without. Gee, why am I developing lesions? And why is the girl that I met at the bar now pregnant? Magical. Came from God, right? But Mark Meadows, on the same day as the doctors was painting the rosy picture, in what he thought was an off-the-record just conversation with reporters, said, no. He's developing some moderate symptoms. And so much so that Trump apparently got mad at Mark Meadows for letting the cat out of the bag. Because always lie. If there's a choice between lying, telling the truth, or even saying that the medical information is confidential between a doctor and a patient, which would be justifiable and that would be cool, no, let's lie first, and then get caught in a lie that okay. You know, been hearing as of late the last few days of you we're all supposed to be better human beings, and we should show our humanity, and offering condolences and thoughts and prayers and all that. I think when it's heartfelt, which it has been, yeah, but that is not a static thing, you know, and it's not supposed to be a caveat that me or people who are like-minded as I am needs to say before we say what we're feeling or saying what we think. Just because you want someone to recover doesn't mean that you're not allowed to criticize them. Or maybe, just maybe, just because we want someone to recover doesn't mean we also acknowledge that what they're recovering from, they deserve. And this thing deserves it. Maybe he should feel the discomfort that other 74-year-olds would suffer through. There, but for the grace of God, go I, or them, or him. But not Trump. No, because Trump, as president, gets the best possible medical attention, care, and comfort that any American will ever receive. Do you think a 74-year-old man or woman of similar body condition, perhaps ailments similar to him that we'll never find out because magic, he is Superman, you think they have a good chance of recovering as well as President Trump? Do you honestly believe that? I gave myself a time limit after I made my statement of wishing him well and wanting him to recover. I gave myself a time limit. I gave myself a day to just let everything settle. Don't comment. Don't post anything really critical. Just see what happens. Let the day go by. And then return to reality. Because him getting sick with COVID-19, with all the things that he did, all the reckless, sloppy, bullshit things that he done, to be in public, to do public rallies with no masks, mocking Joe Biden for wearing his mask. Oh, he has the biggest mask I've ever seen. And he's only 200 feet away. Yeah, that's, gee, I wonder why he tests negative. And he continues to test negative. He tested negative recently. The last test that they did right after the debate. And then when they found out that Trump had COVID, they tested him again. And guess what? Still negative. Apparently on Fox News, one of the Trump minions was actually blaming Joe Biden for not contracting coronavirus, saying that, oh, well, Trump knows what it's like to have COVID. Joe Biden doesn't know what it's like to have COVID. Another martyr syndrome talking point. We find out when we find out in the debate that they arrived too late to even get tested, so they're on the honor system. I don't know what else to even go on this. I mean, this is so farcical, ironic. Man, I was thinking of movie titles for this. Trump in Adventures in COVID Sitting, Weekend at Walters. I mean, people have suffered and died from this. It tells people not to be afraid of COVID. Oh, he survived it with the best possible human care no other person could possibly have. Like he he beat it. Right? There's an unofficial web page for their gift shop that apparently there's going to be commemorative coins. Commemorative. I didn't even say that right, but get my point. There's going to be coins of Trump saying that he beat COVID. He beat COVID. We're supposed to have the humanity to rise above this bullshit and still wish him well as a human being. A human being wouldn't do the same for Joe Biden. Joe Biden had to find out about him having COVID through the media. Chris Christie had to find out through the media. Then he got himself tested. He now has it. We're supposed to be better, more humane, with more humanity than a president of the United States. Do you not see why that is wrong? That we're supposed to be better than a president of the United States. If we can acknowledge that he is not better, that he is a scumbag of the highest order, then maybe we should do something about him not being president of the United States. As it stands, I don't know, because there are political machinations, there are wheels turning in this, of if this is going to give Trump a bump or not, because of his stricken COVID condition. He's a victim now. You can't be mean to him. How can you be mean to him? He made fun of Hillary Clinton on the 2016 campaign trail when she had pneumonia. But no, we're supposed to be more humane than the President of the United States. President of the United States, who again doesn't live in the realm of consequence, so 74 years old of no one telling him no, no one telling him that he can't do something or he's supposed to do something. We're supposed to be better. We're supposed to be good people. We shouldn't mock him for having COVID. We shouldn't wish things on him. I don't wish the worst for him. I want him to be healthy. As one of my fellow Middle America members has said, go to Facebook, go to Middle America, find Vin and Sori on YouTube. They're awesome. They're good people. Everyone in Middle America is good people, even though we disagree, which is a good thing. It's better to disagree than say nothing and just be in our own little camps. I digress from that. But a member of that group said he wants him healthy and certainly alive so that he can face consequences. I agree with that. Is all this stuff was going down at the same time, and then he suddenly gets COVID. We're not talking about his tax problem. We're not talking about his apparent thought process in terms of the military and those who were captured and those who killed in foreign wars. We're not talking about his naked plan for the Supreme Court is not Roe v. Wade. Sure, that's one of the things that is on everybody's mind when it comes to a 6-3 majority in the court. But also, if a contested election goes to the courts and goes up to the Supreme Court, he wants to make sure that court is so packed that there isn't a possibility of him not being reelected through the courts. So all your votes and all our votes will not matter. Or the machinations of making sure if enough votes do not show up by election day via the mail-in ballots, that they will try to hire friendly electors in these states that will do a good job for Boss Trump and throw those ballots out. Who, incidentally, also said, Mr. Trump, that there won't be a transition to power, or there'll be a peaceful transition, or at least a continuation of power, if you throw the ballots out. Yeah, nice for people to say the quiet part out loud. The Shakespeare villain who's giving you the soliloquy, telling the audience what he's about to do, and goes back into the play and do it. We're supposed to be good people compared to this. As a president of the United States, he's supposed to be a good person. Or at least pretend. There are plenty of presidents who come down the pike who, no matter what, how their influence in the economy might be, or how good they are on social issues, or domestic issues, or foreign issues, and still are shitbags. You can go down the line of your presidents that you can think of that, for all their good qualities that they could have, they also have some pretty shitty qualities. And that's either could be from their own personalities, their own thinking, or that could be external because they're trying to cater to their political powers that will keep them in the office that they're holding. And, from both sides of the aisle here, I mean, we can go from Bill Clinton and his wayward nature that gets him in trouble to GW, obviously the Iraq War, and the machinations that came from that. I would put Reagan on there simply because the AIDS epidemic started out, and for 5 or so years, the federal government refused, under his order, I guess, or his implication, to not put any federal funding into the CDC to even research what this illness was. Back when it was called GRID, gay-related immune deficiency, to when it became AIDS and HIV. So it took up to 1985, till his second term, where he can actually utter that word AIDS. So yeah, whatever your venerated presidents were, or did good things from your point of view, there can be a dark side into this. I mean, I can think of a number of them. I can think of the issue where President Johnson wanted to upstage Martin Luther King by having his press conference supersede a Martin Luther King Jr. press conference that he was doing. And he wanted to make sure that all the networks blocked out MLK. Yeah, this is the same guy who was also presided during civil rights laws. He signed it into law. Yeah, he did a good thing, but he still did some pretty shitty things. All you have to do is look. Yeah, I know we're losing our history because of Confederate statues disappearing and all, but there's these things called books. There's information in books. Or so, whatever. Look on your app. Google it, whatever. In any event, just because he's sick does not make President Trump immune to criticism and to acknowledge the irony that perhaps he does deserve it. You know, people will suffer from this far worse than he ever will. And if he does suffer from it, we'll never know because they will always lie to us. I'm tired of the caveat. I'm tired to have to say I wish him well before I lay into reality. And the irony for all of us is if this was just a sympathetic ploy, I don't think it worked. Because President Trump, the boy who cried COVID, we have heard misinformation, bullshit from you for months. And even when you told the truth to Bob Woodward in February, you didn't bother telling that to everybody else, including your own supporters that are buying your bullshit. They are going maskless because the boss is going maskless, and then they get sick. I guess it's a patriotic thing to get sick because, want to be like them libtards, wearing masks, sheltering place, you know, you know, robbing yourselves of freedom, well, while they also stay healthy. There was some math you could do with that. Alright, I'm done ranting and raving about this. I will be back later when we get on to other topics that this president will say and do and flail about in the remaining weeks till November 3rd. The Ranter rants, because the urge to rant is always rising. And you stay safe, stay healthy, be good to each other, be a good person, but not at the expense of reality.